All right, good morning. My name is Luz Molina Lopez, Chair of the CBA's Legislative Committee, and I'd like to call our meeting to order. Let's start by taking roll call. Ms. Berja?
Alicia Berja.
Mary Jiang.
Nancy Corrigan.
Luz Molina Lopez. And I think that's it. And we have a quorum? Yes. Okay, thank you. With that, we have a quorum. Agenda item number 1 is approval of the minutes of the July 25, 2019 Legislative Committee meeting. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I move approval. Second.
Thank you. Is there any questions or comments on this? Okay, let's take roll call.
Alicia Berhow,
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
Mary Jiang,
Abstain.
and Luz Molina Lopez.
Yes. I failed to ask for any public comments on approval of the minutes. Seeing none, we can proceed. Okay. Agenda item number 2 is the CBA's 2019 legislative tracking chart. This is a written report only. Are there any comments from our members? Or any comments from the public? Seeing none, we can move on. Agenda item number 3 is update, discussion, and possible action on legislation which the CBA has taken a position on. Mr. Bone, would you like to help us with this item?
I would, Madam Chair. Thank you. Briefly, if I may, on the prior item, I just did 2 verbal updates I wanted to provide on the tracking chart. Assembly Bill 476 has passed the legislature and has now been enrolled. And when a bill is enrolled, then it goes to the governor for his approval. The second item is on the second page of item 2, AB 1181. Similarly, has been approved by the Senate and has now been enrolled before the governor.
Thank you. I apologize for skipping over that.
No trouble. Moving on to item 3, Madam Chair and members, as discussed in the meeting materials for this item, staff have provided analyses only on the bills that were active and amended since the prior CBA meeting. One exception is to LC item 3E, which is Assembly Bill 1525. Staff provided the typical materials for this item due to the CBA's direction at the prior meeting. Therefore, for LC item 3, I intend to only present on items A through F. However, I'm happy to answer any questions or discuss any of the other bills noted on this portion of the agenda. So therefore, with your permission, Madam Chair and members, I will proceed to item 3A.
Please continue.
Thank you. A is Assembly Bill 476, which would require the Department of Consumer Affairs to create a task force to study and issue a report regarding the licensing of professionals trained outside of the United States. Since the prior CBA meeting, the bill was amended to permit DCA to enter into a contract with a third party to complete the report required by the bill, move the deadline for report submittal to July 1st of 2022, and made non-substantive changes relative to the naming of appointing authorities of higher educational representatives. This bill is currently on the governor's desk awaiting his signature or veto. Staff recommend the CBA maintain their watch position and no action is required. I'll turn it back to the chair.
Any questions on this? Can you help me understand what is the time period that the governor has to sign bills that are on his desk presently?
During this time of year, it would be between now and October 13th.
Thank you. Okay, no comment on this, so we can move on.
Great. The next is 3B, Assembly Bill 1076. Under current law, if an individual wishes to have their arrest or criminal conviction record sealed or dismissed, that person must petition the Superior Court and follow established procedures. AB 1076 provides for a new administrative process to grant arrest or conviction relief, which will be developed and managed by the Department of Justice. Page 1 and 2 of our analysis discusses the recent amendments to the bill. Most significantly, the bill now is contingent upon a future state budget appropriation, only applies to arrests and convictions that occur after January 1, 2021, and is limited to infractions, misdemeanors, and convictions that result in probation. As discussed at the prior LC meeting, there is a group of licensees who have not yet submitted their fingerprints to the CBA for a criminal background check. If those licensees has a criminal conviction granted relief under the bill, CBA would not be aware of that conviction and be therefore unable to consider appropriate enforcement action. Staff expressed the CBA's concerns with the bill and attempted to engage in a dialogue with the author's office and the bill sponsor to resolve the issue. We have to date unfortunately been unsuccessful in achieving resolution to our concerns. The bill was approved by the legislature and is now awaiting action from the governor. Consistent with our previously approved position, staff submitted a letter to the governor requesting his veto of the bill. Therefore, staff recommend the CBA maintain its opposed unless amended position. And I'll turn it back to you, Madam Chair.
Any questions on this from our members? I do have a question. So there has been no response from the author's office to engage in discussion regarding our concerns?
They were responsive. We had expressed the concerns even prior to the July meeting and had 1 or 2 conversations with them. Following the July meeting, circled back with them, provided a letter, but then at that point, I think end of session came around and they were focused on trying to get their bill through and approved. The amendments do significantly narrow the bill. As I mentioned, it only relates to convictions kind of on a go-forward basis. So that would narrow the types, the volume of crimes, rather, that we're speaking of, but the CBA's core concern is still unaddressed. So if the bill is signed into law, then we may wish to engage in a further dialogue with the office about how we can address that next year.
And then my other question is, has there been any response from the governor's office regarding our letter requesting him to veto?
No, that's typically very uncommon for the governor to reach out and engage. I mean, it happens, but in this case, no, I've not received any communication from the governor's office.
Okay. And then just for my knowledge, the record of, let's say he does sign this into law, is there a record that the CBA had requested a veto?
A record? I'm not sure I understand.
We submitted a
In the
letter.
future, like, is there
Yes.
a history
We submitted-
related to the, well, I understand our committee, but let's say, for example, in the law books, is there something that says this law is now in place, but there had been concerns from the CBA?
Oh, I see. That would be noted in the legislative history. So there are records that are maintained. Of course, we maintain our own records, but the legislature maintains records of support and opposition. I don't know how all that is maintained, but there would be some record of our
I was
concerns.
just curious. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else related to this agenda item? Seeing none, we can move on.
3C is Assembly Bill 1181, which requires financial records relating to certain solicitations for charitable purposes be maintained according to a new accounting standard apart from generally accepted accounting principles, or GAAP. Recent amendments to the bill narrowed the scope to only pertain to medication, medical devices, and supplies that are restricted by the donor from being distributed in the United States. Also, the bill's implementation was delayed until January 2021. Unfortunately, these amendments do not resolve the CBA's core concerns with the bill, which is that the AB 1181 creates a new accounting standard apart from the typical process and the resulting conflict with GAAP. This bill was approved by the legislature and is now awaiting action from the governor. Consistent with our previously approved submission, staff submitted a letter to the governor requesting his veto. Therefore, staff recommend the CBA maintain its opposed position. I'll turn it back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any questions on this?
Question. So if this proposed legislation is signed by the governor and we say that it's exception to GAAP, and if it's passed, how would the accounting profession deal with this law? This in contract to GAAP?
That is an excellent question, Ms. Shaw.
Mr. Jason Fox is joining us in this
Jason Fox
discussion.
with the California Society of CPAs. I'm not sure exactly how to answer that question. I think your question is frankly part of the reason why we opposed the bill and are seeking a veto as well. I think part of the delayed implementation date to allow for a year to kind of sort through some of those questions, at least, with the Attorney General's office providing additional guidance, and then for the profession kind of figuring out how to navigate that. But that's the crux of the policy right there. So.
Thank you.
So I presume somebody's advising the governor to have some CPA person. I think Fiona Ma might be a good person to touch contact, but someone to at least give him some input.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any more to add to this discussion?
Well, I mean, in response to that, Mary, Cal CPA has written a letter, the board has written a letter, at the national level letters have been written explaining what a complicated mess that would create. So we just have to get their ear on this. And as Mr. Fox is suggesting, in that year of implementation, maybe when everybody's wrestling with the issue, sometimes that's when the matter comes to light. So.
And that wrestling process has already begun. So,
Sometimes when you come to light, they may later have to do an amendment to the bill.
perhaps.
Is there, do we know if there's any other requests for the governor to veto this, aside from the CBA's request?
I believe Cal CPA and Mr. Fox could elaborate further, perhaps.
I think there's letters referenced in the packet, but I know the AICPA has written a letter, the National Association of State Boards of Accounts and NASBA have written a letter. A number of charitable organizations have also written letters, particularly ones impacted by those types of gifts in kind.
Thank you. Well, I do see that this is of great concern. I imagine that we have taken every step that we can possibly take as the CBA to express our concern on this. And we'll wait and see. Thank
Yes.
you.
Item 3D, if I may, Madam Chair. This is Assembly Bill 1521, the CBA Sunset Bill. As noted during the July meeting, one section of the bill was in conflict with a section of Assembly Bill 1076. Fortunately, both bills have been amended and this conflict has been resolved. I am pleased to report that AB 1521 was approved by the legislature and now awaits the governor's signature. Earlier this month, staff submitted a letter to the governor requesting his signature. Therefore, Madam Chair, staff recommend that the CBA maintain its support position and no action is required at this time. Turn it back to you.
Any questions on this one? Okay.
Great. Next, item E, Assembly Bill 1525. This bill would provide a safe harbor for certain financial professionals under state law, as well as CPAs and accounting firms who provide services to those licensed to engage in the commercial cannabis industry. The bill's author, Assemblymember Jones Sawyer Sr., attended the CBA's July meeting and spoke on his bill. During the related discussion, the CBA directed staff to draft a support if amended position letter that would include public accountants and other professions consistent with the purpose of the bill. The draft letter is attachment 2 for this item, and the language requests that the bill be amended to include any individual or firm practicing pursuant to our Practice Act. This would necessarily then include public accountants and those practicing under our mobility laws. The letter then makes a suggestion that the author consider including other professions that practice tax preparation services, but the letter does not condition the CBA's support upon that suggestion. Staff recommend the CBA change its position from watch to support if amended and approve the draft letter for submission to the legislature. And I will turn it back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any questions on this one? Have we been in discussions at all with CTEC about this? I mean, are they also watching this?
I have not been in discussions with CTEC or other organizations that represent, I think you mean tax preparation?
Yes.
No, I have
Okay,
not.
just quite curious.
Yeah, but would it be, Mary Jo, would it be helpful to maybe get support or letters from CTAC or the Enroll Agent Association in support of this bill?
That would typically be work that would be performed by the author's staff. That's typically the function that they serve. And I did have a conversation with them last month surrounding these questions of, well, what types of services from CPAs are you interested in? And did note the tax preparation services. And I think they're kind of still wrestling through what other elements they may wish to include in the bill. And so therefore, that's why the staff, we worded the letter to make that a suggestion rather than a condition for them to earn the CBA's support.
Ms. Burha?
I make a recommendation that the California Board of Accountancy would change our position from watch to support if amended for AB 1525.
Thank you. May I have a second?
I second.
Any further discussion on this? Any questions from the public? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote.
Okay, Luz Molina Lopez,
Yes.
Mary Jiang,
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
and Alicia Burhout.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. May I have a motion for approval of the draft letter related to AB 1525, which is explaining the change of our position to support if amended?
So moved.
Thank you. May I have a second?
So second.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the members or the public? Seeing none, let's do the vote.
Alicia Burhout,
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
Mary Jiang,
Yes.
and Luz Molina Lopez.
Yes. Okay, so let's see, where are we?
We're on 3F, Senate Bill
Oh,
51.
thank you.
This-
Please continue, Mr. Bone.
Thank you. This bill, Madam Chair, would establish cannabis limited charter banks and cannabis limited charter credit unions to provide certain banking services to the cannabis industry. Since the July meeting, the bill was amended to declare the intent of the legislature that banks and other financial institutions support and maintain good faith relationships with banks doing business with licensed cannabis businesses, and made other non-substantive changes. The author made this a 2-year bill so that he could have more time to engage in discussions with the governor's office. So now Senate Bill 51 is on the Assembly floor's inactive file. Staff recommend the CBA maintain their support position and no action is required. Turn it back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any questions on this? Seeing none, we can move on.
We're now on item 4. 4A is Assembly Bill 5. AB 5 codifies a 2018 California Supreme Court decision that established new criteria to classify workers as either an independent contractor or an employee. This is known as the Dynamex decision. The bill contains a number of exceptions, including one for accountants to this new rule. The CBA on occasion will contract with outside CPAs to consult on enforcement matters, but as discussed in the analysis, the bill is not expected to impact the CBA's ability to engage in these contracts. In addition, Madam Chair, since the meeting materials were mailed out, the governor signed AB 5 into law. Therefore, no action is required. I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you. Is there any questions on this item? I don't see any, so we can move on.
Thank you. 4B is Senate Bill 551. This bill requires operators of certain oil and gas production equipment and facilities to submit a report to the Department of Conservation regarding their liability to plug and abandon their wells, decommission production facilities, and provide site remediation. When creating this report, operators would be required to estimate their costs in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles as issued by the Financial Accounting Standards Board. This bill was approved by the legislature and is now awaiting action from the governor. Staff recommend a watch position on the bill. I'll turn it back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any questions or comments on this one? Okay. I do like that it is in accordance with GAAP, so yay there. And then I also do appreciate that this helps the environmental issues or the environmental aims that we hope to accomplish as a state of California. Okay, so let's see. May I have a motion to for the CBA to support this bill? No, I'm sorry, to watch this bill.
I'll move the motion.
And I'll second.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the members or the public? Seeing none, let's do a vote.
Okay, Luz Molina Lopez,
Yes.
Mary Jian,
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
and Alicia Burhow.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. So I believe that's it for item 4. Okay. Agenda item number 5 is review and possible consideration of positions on legislation that the CBA is monitoring. Mr. Bone, can you take us through that?
I have no prepared comments for these bills, Madam Chair, as these are bills that the staff have been monitoring, but I'm happy to answer any questions the members may have.
Thank you. Seeing that we're near the end of this legislative session, right, is there any action that you expect to happen with these, the bills on this list?
Some of them are spot bills, so they are waiting for some future amendments next year. Some of the bills have moved through the process and are before the governor, but these bills, because they don't have a particularized impact to the CBA or its mission, there are some bills in there that have a broad impact to state agencies, for example. But no, I don't have any further comments. We monitor them for potential amendments and then bring them forth to the board if necessary.
Thank you. Okay, are there any questions on this from our members or any public comments? Seeing none, we can move on. Agenda item number 6, yes, is legislative items for future meetings. Mr. Bone, do you have any comments related to this item?
No comments, Madam Chair.
Are there any comments from the members? Or any comments from the public? Seeing none, we can move on to agenda item number 7. Are there any comments in general from the public? Seeing none, let's move on to agenda item number 8. Items for the next meeting. Do any members wish to request that any items be placed on the next legislative committee meeting agenda? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned.